My name is Clara Vance, and on the night of my 27th birthday, the room smelled like champagne, perfume, and lies. Crystal glasses sparkled under chandeliers. Waiters in black vests moved like shadows. Laughter danced across the table, sharp, hollow, rehearsed. Then my grandfather lifted his glass. "So tell us, Clara," he said, smiling. "How does it feel to have $3.4 million at 27? My hand froze halfway to my mouth. "What?" He laughed softly, thinking I was joking. "Your trust fund, of course. I assume you've invested wisely." The air shifted. Forks stopped clinking. My mother's hand stiffened around her napkin. My father's jaw flexed. I blinked. I don't have a trust fund." The room went silent. Then my grandfather's smile vanished. "Interesting," he said. "Because my accountant says otherwise." And just like that, the night I thought was a celebration turned into an inquisition. I grew up in a family that treated silence like gold. My parents, Richard and Elena Vance, believed emotions were weakness. We smiled for photographs, hosted charity galas, and never talked about money, unless someone else's name was on the check. I left home at 21. I wanted to build something real, so I moved to San Francisco, shared a small apartment with my best friend, Maya, and worked as a freelance designer. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every late night over coffee, Maya would say, "You work too hard, Clara." And I'd laugh. That's the point. I have to. Because my parents didn't send money. They sent advice. When I graduated college, they gave me a book titled How to Manage Your Finances Like an Adult. I smiled for the photos, then spent the night crying over the sink, wondering why love had to feel so distant. A week before my birthday, I lost my job. My boss called me into his glass office, eyes full of corporate sympathy. "You're talented, Clara. But we're downsizing." That was it. No severance. No backup. Just a box of my things and a quiet bus ride home. Maya looked up from her laptop when I came in. "You okay?" "Define okay," I muttered, dropping my box on the couch. "They can't just." They did. I tried to laugh, but it cracked. "Maybe I'll freelance again. Maybe I'll finally sell my soul to Canva." She reached over, squeezing my hand. "Call your parents. Maybe this time." I cut her off. "They'll tell me to save money. Like I can save what I don't have." Still, I called that night. "Mom," I said quietly. "I got laid off." "Oh, that's unfortunate," she replied, her voice bright and distracted. "But darling, everything happens for a reason. I might fall behind on rent." "Well, maybe this will teach you about planning ahead." I bit my lip. I have been planning. For years. "Anyway," she said, "we're celebrating your birthday next week. Don't be late. Dress nicely, Clara. You're the guest of honor." She hung up before I could answer. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, they didn't offer help?" "Not a cent," I said. But apparently, I should look expensive while starving. The week crawled by. Rejection emails piled up. My savings drained faster than my confidence. By Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the clock. Maya came out of her room, hair messy, eyes tired. "You're still up?" "Yeah. Just thinking." "About the dinner?" "About pretending I'm fine in front of people who don't care if I'm drowning." She leaned against the doorframe. "Then maybe it's time they saw who you really are." Her words stayed with me. Saturday came, my birthday. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. One black dress, slightly faded, but it would do. I tied my hair up, swiped on red lipstick, and told myself I was ready. Atelier Marceau shimmered in golden glass when I arrived. My parents were already seated, immaculate as always. My mother's diamonds caught the light, my father's Rolex glinted as he scrolled through his phone. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Mom said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You look modest." "Hi to you too," I said softly, taking my seat. Dad glanced up. "Rough week?" "I lost my job." He nodded, unconcerned. "You'll bounce back." "Sure," I said, "I just need a few miracles." They laughed lightly, as if I'd told a joke. Then, before I could exhale, the door opened. My grandfather, Henry Vance, entered the room, silver hair, sharp eyes, and an aura that made everyone stand taller. "Grandpa?" I said, surprised. "You came." "Of course, I did." He smiled, kissed my forehead. "I wouldn't miss your 27th. Mom's smile faltered. "Dad, you didn't say you were coming." He waved her off. "Spontaneity keeps me young." He sat beside me, ordered whiskey neat, then turned his gaze toward me. "So, Clara, tell me, how's the trust fund treating you?" My fork paused midair. "The what?" He chuckled. "Your trust fund. The one I set up when you were born. You haven't spent it all already, have you?" "I don't have a trust fund." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Grandpa leaned back slowly. "Well, that's odd. Because my financial advisor says otherwise." Mom forced a laugh. "Oh, Dad, there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Elena," he said, voice low and steady. "Unless you'd like to explain why my granddaughter's account is empty." Within minutes, we were moved to a private room. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing the tension inside. Grandpa's assistant and his lawyer were already waiting, documents spread out on the table. "Clara's trust was funded with $1 million at birth," the lawyer said calmly. "With accrued interest, it should now be worth approximately $3.4 million. Should be?" I whispered. He nodded grimly. "As of this morning, the balance is $200,000. I felt my stomach drop. Grandpa looked at my parents. "Where did the rest go?" Dad rubbed his temples. "We borrowed some of it." "Investments." "The market crashed." "That's $3 million, Richard," Grandpa said coldly. Mom's voice cracked. "We used it for the house, the cars, business expenses. Everything was for Clara's future." "My future?" I said, my voice trembling. "You mean the one you built without me?" "Sweetheart, you wouldn't have understood." "Try me," I snapped. Grandpa raised a hand. "Enough." He turned to his assistant. "List the withdrawals." She read, monotone. "Mortgage payoff, $470,000. 2 Tesla Model S, $290,000. Home renovation, $350,000. Investment in Elena Vance properties, $500,000, recorded as total loss. Property purchase in Malibu, $1.8 million. My voice was barely a whisper. "A beach house?" Mom looked down. "It was going to be yours one day." I laughed, broken, bitter. "That's comforting. You stole my money to buy me something you'd never give." Grandpa's eyes hardened. "Give me the keys." Dad opened his mouth to argue, but one look from him and the protest died. Mom slid the keys across the table with trembling hands. Grandpa turned to me. "They're yours. Every property, every asset purchased under your name or with your funds, my legal team will handle the transfer." I stared at the keys, their weight cold and heavy in my palm. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Dad, don't do this. We're family." He looked at her without blinking. "Family doesn't steal." They left the room slowly, their designer shoes silent against the carpet. When the door closed, I felt both lighter and hollow. Grandpa sighed, shoulders softening. "Clara, you don't have to decide tonight. But know this, they plan to disappear." My assistant found their tickets to Costa Rica. My heart stuttered. They were going to run? Yes. Tomorrow morning. I stared at the table. They came to dinner to say goodbye. He nodded. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I whispered, they never loved me, did they? He reached for my hand. Love and greed can look the same for a while, but only one survives. When I stepped out into the cold night, the city lights blurred through the fog. My phone buzzed. Maya. Clara? How was dinner? I paused, staring up at the stars that looked so distant, so free. It was the night I found out everything I thought I knew was a lie, I said softly. But maybe, that's how truth begins. She was silent for a moment. You okay? No, I whispered. But I will be. And as I walked away, keys clutched tight in my hand, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of my revenge, quiet, patient, inevitable. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window was alive, cars gliding through fog, horns echoing off concrete. But inside my apartment, everything was still. Too still. I sat at my desk, the lamp flickering softly over piles of unpaid bills. The same desk where I'd spent countless nights designing logos for other people's dreams while mine kept slipping through my fingers. In my hand, I still held the keys my grandfather had given me, heavy, metallic proof that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. Maya appeared in the doorway, hair tied up, wearing her oversized hoodie. You're still awake. Can't sleep, I said. She sat beside me on the floor. Want to talk about it? They took everything, Maya. Every cent my grandfather meant for me. Every chance I thought I never had. Her eyes softened. And now you have it back. I shook my head. Not yet. I might have the keys. But they still have something I want more than money. What's that? Their peace. The next morning, I went to the law office my grandfather recommended. Marble floors, polished steel, and silence thick enough to cut through. The lawyer, Mr. Avery, was the kind of man who spoke in measured tones and never blinked twice. Miss Vance, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Your parents' financial activity is extensive. I flipped through the pages. Each one was a betrayal written in numbers, wire transfers, false investments, property titles under shell companies. My voice came out low. They thought they were clever. They were, he said. Until now. I closed the folder. Freeze every account. All of it. He hesitated. You're certain? I met his eyes. They used my money to buy their lives. It's time I repossess both. Over the next few weeks, I worked quietly. Methodically. While they scrambled, I rebuilt. I hired a financial investigator. Sold the Malibu house. Liquidated every asset they'd bought with my trust fund. Every dollar went into a new account, one with only my name on it this time. When the wire cleared, I sat at my computer, staring at the balance. $3,421,000.67. For a moment, I just breathed. Maya walked in holding 2 mugs of coffee. You did it. Not yet, I said. They still think they can outsmart me. 2 weeks later, the tabloids exploded. Vance Properties under investigation for fraud. Richard and Elena Vance face lawsuit from their own daughter. I didn't leak it. My grandfather did. When the headlines hit, my phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers. Reporters. Old friends who suddenly remembered my name. But the call I waited for came that evening. Clara. My mother's voice was shaking. Please. You have to make it stop. I already did, I said quietly. You're destroying us. No, I said, standing by the window, watching the city lights blur into gold. You destroyed yourselves when you decided I didn't matter. She was crying now. We'll lose everything. Welcome to my world. A week later, I went to see my grandfather. He was sitting on the porch of his lake house, coffee steaming beside him. You handled it well, he said. Better than I would have at your age. I smiled faintly. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel bad either. Just necessary. He nodded. That's what real justice feels like. We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked, "What will you do now?" I looked out across the water. Start over. But this time I'll build something no one can steal. He smiled. That's my girl. That night, I walked down to the edge of the lake. The water shimmered under the moonlight. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because I had money, but because I had truth. Maya's words echoed in my head, "Make it the last time they treat you like that." I smiled to myself. It was. I took out the photo I'd found in the Malibu house, my parents, smiling, perfect, invincible. Then I let it fall into the water. It floated for a second, then sank slowly beneath the surface. My quiet revenge, I whispered. Complete. It's strange how silence can roar louder than chaos. 3 months had passed since I reclaimed what was mine. The lawsuits were still moving, the tabloids had grown tired, and my parents had disappeared from the headlines, but not from my thoughts. Some nights, I'd still wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, wondering if I'd gone too far. Then I'd remember their voices at that dinner, the lies, the entitlement, and the doubt faded. Justice isn't always clean. Sometimes, it's just survival dressed as vengeance. One morning, I was sketching designs at my desk when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Clara Vance. A man's voice came through, calm, smooth, too familiar. You always were brave, Clara. I froze. Dad? Don't hang up, he said quickly. Please. My pulse quickened. You have 30 seconds. I just need to see you. One conversation. No lawyers. No threats. I laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from a man who forged my signature. His sigh came through the line. I deserve that. But it's important. Your mother's not well. Not well, I repeated. You mean not rich? There was a pause. Clara, please. Just dinner. Tomorrow night. Neutral ground. Something in his tone caught me, not arrogance this time, but exhaustion. Defeat. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. When I told my grandfather, he frowned. You know it's a trap, right? I know, I said. But sometimes you have to walk into the fire to prove you're not afraid of it anymore. He didn't like it, but he didn't stop me. Maybe he knew I needed closure more than protection. The next evening, I arrived at a small Italian restaurant downtown, one of those places where the lights are low and every table feels like a secret. They were already there. My father in a worn gray suit, my mother pale, thinner than I remembered. For the first time in my life, they looked small. Human. Clara, Mom whispered, eyes glistening. You look grown. I had to be, I said quietly. You made sure of that. We sat. The waiter brought water. No one touched it. Dad leaned forward. We've lost everything. The houses, the cars, even the accounts. You took it all. I didn't take it, I said. I recovered it. He nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Fair enough. But we need your help now. I almost laughed. You're joking. Just hear me out, he said quickly. There's an opportunity. Real estate investment overseas. If you back us with. I raised a hand. You're unbelievable. You steal my trust fund, lie to my face, and now you want me to invest in your next scam? Mom's eyes filled with tears. Please, Clara. We're not asking for much. Just enough to start over. I stared at her. You already had a start. And you buried it. Dad's voice hardened. Don't forget who raised you. I leaned in, my voice low. I haven't. That's why I'm here, to remember exactly who not to become. Silence hung like smoke between us. Then my mother whispered, "We just wanted to protect you." By stealing from me? Tears rolled down her cheeks. By giving you the life we never had. I shook my head slowly. You gave me something better, the strength to live without you. I stood, dropped a few bills on the table. Dinner's on me. You can't afford it anymore. And I walked out. That night, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, shaking. Not from anger, from release. For years, I'd dreamed of this moment, facing them, winning. But now, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. Maya called. How'd it go? I took a deep breath. They wanted money again. Wow, she said. Some people never learn. Yeah, I whispered. But I did. The next morning, I got an email from my lawyer. Subject line, final settlement confirmed. The case was over. My parents had signed everything away in exchange for avoiding prison. Their names were stripped from every document, every asset, every trace of the life they'd built on my future. They were gone. Weeks passed. The air felt lighter. I rented a new studio downtown, sunlight, high ceilings, peace. Clients started returning. My work gained attention. I even got my first feature in a design magazine. One evening, I stood by the window, watching the city glow beneath me. For the first time in years, the world didn't feel heavy. My grandfather called. So, Clara, what's next for you? I smiled. Living. Not surviving. And maybe forgiving, someday. Someday, he echoed. That's enough. Later that night, as I closed my laptop, a thought lingered. Revenge doesn't heal you. It empties you just enough to start filling again, with truth, with clarity, with peace. I wasn't the same woman who walked into that dinner months ago. I was someone forged by betrayal, rebuilt by truth. And as I stood there, city lights dancing in my reflection, I whispered. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. I used to think endings were clean. That once justice was served, life would fold neatly into peace. But peace, I've learned, isn't silent. It hums, quietly, persistently, until something breaks it. That something arrived on a Tuesday morning. A single white envelope, no return address. Just my name, written in my mother's delicate cursive. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I turned it over. No seal, just a faint scent of lavender, her perfume. I almost threw it away. But curiosity, or maybe unfinished love, won. I opened it. My dearest Clara. If you're reading this, it means you finally have what was always yours. I know you'll hate me for the things I did, for the lies, the theft, the silence. But before you close your heart to me completely, there's something you deserve to know. You were never supposed to find out the truth like this. Your father made choices that destroyed everything, including us. And I took the blame to protect you. My vision blurred. I sank into the chair by my window, the paper trembling in my hand. There was more. When you were 16, your father made a deal, one that involved your name, your inheritance, your future. I found out too late. If I hadn't signed those papers, they would have taken everything, even your education. I thought I was saving you. I thought if I stayed quiet, you'd still have a chance at the life I never had. But silence became a prison. And I lost you. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. For years, I'd carried anger like armor. Now it felt like it was melting, painfully, slowly. The letter continued. Your father never stopped gambling, Clara. The debts kept growing. I begged him to stop. He wouldn't listen. The accounts I stole, I used them to pay off men who would have hurt him, and maybe even you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Only understanding. You were my light, even in the dark. I stared at those last lines for a long time. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to believe her. My phone buzzed, a message from Maya. Coffee? You sound like you need air. I didn't reply. I just grabbed the letter and left. The cafe was quiet that morning. I slid into a corner booth, the letter folded in front of me. Maya arrived, eyes sharp as always. You look like you saw a ghost. In a way, I did. I pushed the letter toward her. Read it. She scanned it silently, then looked up. Wow. I don't know what to believe anymore, I said softly. Everything I built my revenge on, what if it wasn't the whole story? Clara, Maya leaned closer. Protecting you doesn't erase what she did. But maybe it explains it. I stared out the window, watching people pass, strangers living lives untouched by betrayal. What if forgiveness makes me weak? I whispered. She smiled faintly. Maybe it makes you free. That night, I sat in my studio, the city lights flickering through the blinds. I pulled out an old box from under the bed, letters, photos, little fragments of a family that used to be. There was one picture, me and my mother in the garden, her arms wrapped around me, both of us laughing. It was before everything fell apart. Before I learned what love could destroy. I placed the letter beside the photo and whispered. I don't forgive you yet. But I'm trying. And for the first time in years, I cried, not from anger, but from release. The next morning, I mailed a letter of my own. To Mom. I got your letter. I still don't know how to feel, but I know this. Maybe you didn't protect me the right way, but you tried. And that counts for something. I don't want to hate you anymore. Not because you deserve peace, but because I do. Clara. That night, as the moonlight spilled across my desk, I realized something. Revenge had given me closure. But truth, even painful truth, was giving me healing. And healing was something I never thought I'd allow myself to feel again. I never thought I'd go back. Not after everything that happened. But the heart has its own strange logic, it drags you toward closure even when your mind screams, don't. It was a gray afternoon when I decided. I'd been staring at her letter for days, rereading every word, every apology tucked between the lines of guilt. Finally, I folded it gently, slipped it into my coat pocket, and whispered to myself. Just once. Then it's over. The care home sat on the edge of town, quiet, surrounded by trees that were losing their color. When I stepped inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and lilies. The receptionist looked up. You're here for Mrs. Hart? I hesitated before answering. Yes. I'm her daughter. She smiled softly, as if she'd been expecting me. Room 12. She's awake today. The walk down the hall felt endless. Each step echoed, slow, deliberate, heavy. And then I saw her. My mother sat by the window, frail, her silver hair tied neatly. When she turned, her eyes, those same soft eyes I used to run to as a child, widened in disbelief. Clara? I nodded, my voice barely there. Hi, Mom. For a moment, silence filled the room, not cold, but uncertain. Then she whispered, You came. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted. But your letter, it changed something. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. I didn't think you'd read it. I almost didn't. I sat across from her, the small table between us. You said you did everything to protect me. Was that true? She took a long breath. Yes. And I failed anyway. Her hands trembled as she reached for the teacup. I noticed the way her fingers shook, the same hands that used to braid my hair before school. I thought, she began, voice quivering, if I kept you away from the ugliness, you'd grow up free from it. But I only made you hate me. I swallowed hard. You lied to me. You took from me. You let me believe you were the villain. I was, she whispered. I lied because I was afraid of what the truth would do to you. Tears blurred my vision. And what did it do instead? She looked out the window. It made you strong. Stronger than I ever was. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping gently against the glass. Then she said softly, "Your father's gone." I froze. When? 2 weeks ago. Heart failure. They found him in a motel room. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Pity? Nothing fit. Just a hollow ache that came with the word gone. "I'm sorry," I murmured. She nodded, tears streaming silently. "He made mistakes, but I loved him. And I loved you more." "I know," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. I stood, moved to her side, and took her hand. It was cold, fragile, but familiar. "You don't have to carry it anymore," I whispered. "The guilt. The weight. I forgive you." Her breath hitched, and her grip tightened around mine. "Say it again." "I forgive you." She closed her eyes. "Then I can finally rest." I stayed with her for hours, just talking. About the little things. The flowers she used to grow. The songs she'd hum while cooking. For the first time in years, it felt like I had my mother back, not the woman who lied, not the woman who fell, but the woman who loved me, however imperfectly. When it was time to leave, she whispered, "Promise me you'll live for yourself now." "I will," I said. "No more revenge. Just peace." She smiled, a small, tired, beautiful smile. And as I walked out of that room, I knew it was the last time I'd see her. That night, I drove to the old beach we used to visit when I was little. The tide was low, the air cool. I stood by the water, the letter still in my pocket. I took it out, read it one last time, and let the wind take it. It fluttered away, a white ghost disappearing into the dark. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It just softened its edges. And maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting what broke you, but learning how to live with the cracks. It's strange how quiet peace feels. Not loud like revenge, not sharp like anger, just quiet. Like the soft hum of a city waking up after a storm. After my mother's passing, the world seemed slower. The air felt lighter, the noise inside my head finally gone. I spent days walking through the city, noticing things I used to ignore, the way sunlight hit glass windows, the laughter of strangers, the smell of coffee drifting from open cafes. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about the past. I was living in the present. A month later, I reopened my design studio. Same name. New purpose. This time, it wasn't about building an empire or proving I'd survived. It was about creating, freely, honestly. Maya helped me with the relaunch. "You know," she said one afternoon as we arranged a wall of sketches, "you look different these days." "Different how?" I asked. She smiled. "You're not fighting anymore." I paused, looking at the designs, soft tones, organic lines, a touch of gold in every detail. "I guess I don't need to," I said. "The battle's over." That weekend, I decided to do something impulsive. I booked a train to the coast. No plan, no schedule, just escape. The ocean greeted me like an old friend. The same beach where I let my mother's letter go, but this time, I came with nothing to release. I sat on the sand, sketchbook in hand, and drew the horizon. Somewhere between the lines, I felt her, my mother's quiet strength, my grandfather's steady wisdom, even my own scars whispering that I was still whole. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up. A man stood a few feet away, camera in hand, smiling. He looked like he belonged to the ocean, calm, sunlit, effortless. "Sure," I said. He sat beside me, aiming his lens at the sea. "Perfect light today," he murmured. I smiled faintly. "I wouldn't know. I'm better with pencils than cameras." He turned to me. Then we see the same world, just differently. There was something disarming about his voice. No questions, no expectations, just presence. I'm Ethan, he said after a pause. Clara, I replied. We talked for hours, about art, cities, small moments that mattered. He told me he photographed places that people usually overlooked. I told him I designed spaces that felt like peace. When the sun began to set, he asked softly, "Will I see you here again?" "Maybe," I said, smiling. "If the light's right." He laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't ask for anything in return. That night, I returned to my hotel, heart strangely light. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something simpler, purer. The quiet possibility of it. And I realized, maybe that's what new beginnings feel like. Not fireworks, not grand declarations. Just stillness, and a door quietly opening inside your heart. Weeks turned into months. My design started gaining recognition, not for revenge, but for beauty. People began calling my work healing architecture. One journalist asked me in an interview, "Where do you draw your inspiration from?" I smiled. From broken things that learned how to be whole again. There's a moment, right before dawn, when the world feels suspended, not dark, not light, just waiting. That's what my life feels like now. Not perfect. Not broken. Just still. I used to think strength meant fighting, that survival meant keeping your armor on forever. But real strength, I've learned, is softer. It's choosing to open your hands after years of clenching them in fear. The past doesn't haunt me anymore. It visits sometimes, a memory, a scent, a voice I once loved, but it no longer stays. It knows it has no power here. I visit the beach every now and then. The same one where I let the letter go. The ocean still moves the same way, restless, forgiving, endless. I stand at the water's edge, close my eyes, and whisper the same prayer every time. Thank you, for endings that taught me beginnings. Maya always jokes that I've become too zen for my own good. Maybe she's right. But peace, once you've tasted it, becomes addictive. My studio has grown. Designers from all over come to collaborate. We build places that breathe, spaces where people can rest, reflect, and begin again. Sometimes, clients ask why my designs always have windows that face sunrise. I just smile and say, because every story deserves its light. As for Ethan, he still sends me photos from wherever he travels. Sometimes I send back sketches. No promises. No expectations. Just two souls, both learning how to see beauty again. Maybe one day our paths will meet for good. Maybe not. Either way, I've already found what I was looking for, peace with myself. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about my parents. Not with anger anymore, just understanding. They were flawed, human, fragile. And so was I. Forgiveness didn't make me forget them. It made me remember them differently. Now, every design I make, every space I create, carries a quiet message beneath it. Light always returns. Even to the ruins. One morning, I received a small parcel with no sender's name. Inside was a single photo, the beach, glowing at sunrise. On the back, a handwritten note. Different eyes. Same light. Ethan. I smiled. For the first time, it didn't feel like the end of a story. It felt like the beginning of one. And that's how healing sounds, not like silence, but like life returning.